Recording begins. La conferencia académica sobre catastrophic miscalculations in galactic history. Welcome students. Soy el profesor Corex Vun, Senior Military Historian de los Century Coalition Archives y unfortunately for the Draxan Empire, uno de los pocos surviving witnesses de lo que ahora llamamos the Mercy Convoy incident. Miren sus caras. Tan eager to learn about humans, ¿verdad? Hey, yo recuerdo cuando tenía esa misma fascinación. Before I knew better, before I watched them turn the mighty Draxan war fleets into orbital debris fields. Déjenme transportarlos back 52 cycles ago. Los humans acababan de achieve faster than light travel. Pretty primitive tech por nuestros standards, pero functional enough. El Galactic Council les dio probationary status, que era standard procedure para newcomers. Most species pasan décadas proving themselves worthy of full membership. Most species están content de learn, observe y follow our ancient protocols. Pero los humans eran different. Impatient little creatures, dijo mi colega Ambassador Century en ese tiempo. Always talking, always moving, always wanting more information than they need. Los catalogamos como una curiosity species worth studying, pero not to be taken seriously. Too emotional, too unpredictable para el calculated dance de galactic politics. Sus representantes a veces laugh durante serious negotiations, o usan humor to diffuse tensions de formas que bafflen a nuestros diplomats. Sus ships eran bulky, sus weapons primitive. Sus treaties incluían strange clauses about human rights y non-negotiable ethical principles. Nosotros los humored. Of course, you always humor the new species until they learn their place in the grand hierarchy of the cosmos. What fools we were. Pauses to adjust recording equipment. El Draxan Empire cometió el worst mistake possible. Ellos asumen que los humans eran like us, que responderían a la agresión con careful deliberation, formal complaints y years of diplomatic posturing. Estaban catastrophically wrong. Here's something you won't find in the official records. Cuando el Galactic Security Council first heard what happened to the human rescue convoy, el First Minister Glapuan actually laughed. Now they'll learn how things really work out here, dijo. 3 semanas después, su home world estaba under blockade y nobody was laughing anymore. Drinks water nervously. Déjenme explicarles por qué ninguna advanced civilization en esta galaxy dares to threaten human aid workers anymore. El incidente comenzó en el border colony de Proxima Centauri 4, o como los humans lo llamaban, New Hope. Such an optimistic name. That should have been our first clue about their nature. New Hope sufría un outbreak de Regelian fever. Nasty business, liquefies the organs in 3 days if untreated. La colonia había exhausted sus medical supplies, y el nearest Century Medical Station estaba 2 weeks away at best speeds. Entonces los humans hicieron algo unprecedented. En vez de accepting the statistical casualties como cualquier rational species would, despacharon un emergency convoy desde Earth itself. 5 vessels stripped of weapons para hacer espacio para medical supplies y equipment. Sus fastest ships crewed by volunteer doctors y nurses. El convoy era led por el NSS Nightingale, commanded by Captain Maya Suárez. Hemos recovered sus personal logs, y ¿saben qué escribió antes de partir? Every minute costs lives. We'll sleep when we're dead. Shakes head. Such dramatic creatures. Pero they meant it. Modificaron sus engines a dangerous levels, pushing their ships beyond safe parameters. 3 engineers murieron de radiation exposure durante el journey, pero they kept going. El Draxan Empire controlaba la most direct route a New Hope. By galactic law, los humans submitted su flight plan y purpose 7 days before reaching Draxan space. Here's where the magnificent blunder occurs. El Draxan High Command estaba engaged en suppressing a rebellion en uno de sus mining moons. Vieron los incoming human vessels y, despite crystal clear documentation de su medical mission, concluyeron que must be a covert operation to supply the rebels. Admiral Castar de la Draxan Defense Fleet tomó la decisión without consulting his superiors. A precautionary measure, lo llamó después durante su War Crimes Trial. El Human Convoy estaba halfway through Draxan Space cuando pasó. 3 Draxan Battle Cruisers decloaked y opened fire without warning. Los human ships, carrying no weapons y minimal shielding, para hacer espacio para medical supplies, never stood a chance. El Nightingale fue hit first, su medical bay rafting into space. Imagínense por un momento, thousands of vaccine vials glittering like stars as they scattered into the void. Los other ships intentaron evasive maneuvers, broadcasting su non-combatant status en all frequencies. Los Draxans ignored these pleas y methodically destroyed all 5 vessels. Ice dropped to near whisper. 278 human medical personnel murieron en el ataque. Captain Suárez fue la last to go. Su final transmission fue broadcast across all known frequencies. I've heard the recording. She didn't beg for mercy ni cursed her attackers. Simplemente dijo, Earth, they fired on a rescue convoy. Coordinates attached. They knew who we were. Then silence. Fragments del Nightingale's hull fueron later recovered y placed en un memorial on Earth. I've seen it. Un stark monument de twisted metal y names. Los humans touch it cuando pasan, as if connecting with the dead. Within 24 hours de que esa transmission llegara a Earth, la humanity's response comenzó. And that, my young students, es cuando la Galaxy learned what a terrible mistake Admiral Castar había hecho. El Galactic Council convocó una emergency session después del ataque. Yo estaba ahí como junior observer, barely important enough to have a seat at the back of the chamber. El prevailing mood era mild concern, pero nothing approaching alarm. Los humans van a file a formal protest, predijo High Chancellor Lorex with absolute certainty. We'll establish a committee to investigate the incident, arrange reparations, perhaps censure the Draxan Empire. El Draxan Ambassador, Vortul, incluso parecía bored. Shuffled sus documents y muttered algo about regrettable miscommunications y appropriate compensation for loss of life. 7 horas into this tedious debate, un Proxima Monitoring Station envió un urgent alert. Los humans habían mobilized su entire Soul Defense Fleet. Every warship in their possession estaba moving toward Draxan space. Surely a symbolic gesture, dijo el Regelian Ambassador. It was not, just color uncomfortably. 3 Wave human warships entered hyperspace before the council session había even adjourned. No formal declaration of war, no ultimatum delivered, solo immediate coordinated action. Su parliament votó unanimously. Do you understand how rare that is for humans? They never agree on anything pa authorize all necessary force. La fleet era led por el UNSS Retribution, commanded by Admiral Penelope Blackwood. Until that moment, she'd been unknown outside human military circles. We would all come to know her name very well. El Council frantically dispatched mediators. Yo viajé con Ambassador Centuri al Human Embassy donde nos recibió un junior diplomatic officer llamado Marcus Reeves. El ambassador comenzó nuestro carefully prepared speech about galactic protocols y the proper channels for addressing grievances. Reeves lo cortó mid-sentence. With respect, Ambassador dijo, though Stone suggested none. We're not interested in filing a complaint. But there are procedures, protestó Centuri. Reeves le entregó un data tablet. This isn't a negotiation. It's a courtesy notification of military action already underway. Nosotros estábamos tuned. El Draxan Empire controlaba 37 star systems. Habían sido una galactic power por millennia before humans tamed fire. Y yet these newcomers estaban acting as if. Pauses shakes head la Arcturian delegation tentó next. Appealing directly a Admiral Blackwood via quantum communication. Su response se volvió infamous throughout the galaxy. The time for talking, dijo, her face unnervingly calm, ended when they fired on doctors and nurses. You had centuries to teach the Draxans better manners. Now it's our turn. But Admiral, pleaded el Arcturian, this could trigger a galactic war. Blackwood looked genuinely puzzled. It already has, replied. You just don't realize it yet. Then she terminated the connection. Nuestra intelligence on human military capabilities era, to put it mildly, catastrophically incomplete. Siempre habíamos focused nuestro análisis en sus commercial vessels, los que visitaban nuestras stations y planets. Su military se mantenía to themselves, y never thought to look closer. Why would we? They were just another fledgling species. El first engagement ocurrió en el Draxan Border Outpost, Krell Noem. El station commander, General Dras, tenía un distinguished military record spanning 2 centuries. Cuando sensors detectaron approaching human vessels, reportedly estaba amused. Let them come, les dijo a sus officers. A single lesson will suffice. Deployó una standard defensive formation de 30 warships, enough to annihilate the pitiful human fleet twice over, according to his calculations. Lo que pasó next todavía da nightmares a military strategists. Los human ships dropped out of hyperspace a distancias que nuestros tacticians consideraban absurdly close, practically suicide by conventional doctrine. Pero before the Draxan fleet pudiera capitalize on this apparent blunder, los humans unleashed weapons que we'd never seen before. Leans forward intently. Sus ships fired lo que ahora llamamos kinetic penetrators. Is relatively simple technology really. Tungsten rods accelerated to near relativistic speeds. No energy signatures to detect. No fancy shields could stop them. El first salvo tore through the pride of the Draxan fleet like paper. Then came sus electromagnetic pulse weapons que completely neutralized Draxan targeting systems. Los Draxans, blind y disoriented, fired wildly into empty space mientras human ships ejecutaban maneuvers que nuestros experts habían deemed physically impossible. General Drass frantically called for reinforcements. Llegaron just in time to join the slaughter. 27 minutes after engagement began, la entire Draxan defensive fleet fue destroyed. 27 minutes. La station itself surrendered immediately, pero Admiral Blackwood wasn't accepting surrenders that day. El Retribution fired a single shot que cracked the station's reactor containment. We later calculated que 12 Draxan military personnel murieron en la resulting explosion. Los humans ni siquiera slowed down to verify kills. Solo continued toward the next target. Takes a drink of water with visibly shaking hands. Lo shocking no era solo que los humans won. Era how they fought. Todas nuestras military doctrines enfatizaban measured responses, calculated exchanges of fire, strategic positions maintained. Los humans fought like a force of nature, overwhelming, relentless, seemingly unconcerned with their own losses. Cuando 3 human destroyers fueron crippled durante el second engagement en Draxus Prime, sus crews deliberately crashed sus vessels into el Draxan flagship rather than retreat. El psychological impact de such actions cannot be overstated. How do you fight an enemy who treats death as just another weapon? Yo estaba en el Strategic Command Center cuando llegaron reports del Human Advance toward el Draxan homeworld. Admiral Kir Vos de la Century Defense Force watched los tactical displays en horrified silence antes de turn to me. We've been monitoring the wrong aspects of human development, dijo quietly. We cataloged their art, philosophy, and commerce, while ignoring the fact that they've spent their entire history fighting themselves. They've had more wars in a millennium than the rest of the galactic community combined has had in 50 millennia. El Draxan High Command, finally grasping the severity of their situation, intentó establish a defensive perimeter around sus core worlds. Deployaron su legendary 7th Fleet, veterans of the Andromedan conflicts, equipped with their most advanced technology. La response de Admiral Blackwood fue interceptada por nuestra intelligence services. Les dijo a sus captains simplemente, no survivors. Looks directly at audience. They didn't leave any. La galactic community's reaction al human offensive solo se puede describir como mass panic. Sis que barely habían acknowledged humanity's existence de repente estaban obsessed con understanding these terrifying newcomers. Un emergency summit fue hastily convened en neutral territory. La ancient space station Harmony, que había hosted peace talks por 20,000 years. Representatives de all major galactic powers attended, including for the first time una human delegation led by Ambassador Talon Quinn. Quinn no era nada like los diplomatic representatives que habíamos met before. No mid-junior official this time. Él strode into el Grand Chamber, flanked by military officers wearing the same insignia as los warships currently decimating el Draxan Empire. El message era unmistakable. High Chancellor Lorix habló first, practically begging for restraint. This regrettable incident can surely be resolved without further bloodshed. Stammered. The Draxan Empire acknowledges its error and offers reparations. Quinn's response echoed through the chamber. Reparations? He actually laughed. You still don't understand what's happening, do you? This isn't a negotiation to end a conflict. The conflict will end when the Draxan military capability has been completely neutralized. Mimics gasps from the assembly. La Zelvin representative, renowned for their cool, logical approach, intentó reason with Quinn. Surely complete destruction is disproportionate to the offense. The attack was a tragic mistake. Quinn la cortó. They fired on doctors, nurses, on people whose only mission was to save lives. There was no mistake. Their vessels were clearly marked. Their mission was properly filed. They responded to hails identifying themselves and they were deliberately destroyed. El Argonian ambassador, desperate to prevent further escalation, proposed a ceasefire to allow for mediated discussions. While we talk, replied Quinn, the same Draxan commanders who ordered the attack on our medical ships would be fortifying their positions. That's not happening. Recuerdo watching las faces around that chamber, el dawning horror as they realized que los humans no iban a play by our rules. Por millennia, galactic conflicts habían sido carefully managed affairs, limited engagements, proportional responses, political maneuvering. Los humans fought to win completely, devastatingly, but without hesitation. Lowers voice dramatically. El Medus representative finally preguntó la question everyone was thinking. What do humans want? What will satisfy this blood debt? Quinn's answer fue chilling en su simplicity. Just, dijo. And a galaxy that understands one simple rule. You don't target those who come too ill. Not ever. Mientras el summit se disolvía en caos, oía al Artelian military attaché whispering a su superior. We need to re-evaluate everything we know about humans, their technology, their psychology, their military doctrine. It's all wrong. Su superior nodded grimly. And pray we never give them reason to turn their attention to us. Lo que comenzó como un regrettable incident rápidamente evolved into el most devastating conflict que la galaxia había witnessed en 50,000 years. Los humans no solo attacked military targets, sistemáticamente desmantelaron el entire Draxan war machine. Within 3 weeks, habían destroyed or captured 17 major Draxan shipyards. Within 2 months, controlaban every strategic resource node en Draxan space. Lo que shocked a military observers no era solo la speed, era el method. Pulse-up holographic displays showing battle formations. Conventional galactic warfare followed predictable patterns established over millennia. Fleets engaging at standardized distances. Había recognized positions of advantage, acceptable losses, strategic withdrawals. Los humans ignored all of that. Atacaban from impossible vectors at point-blank ranges que ningún sane commander consideraría. Usaban civilian mining ships retrofitted with military-grade shields como battering rams. Deliberately vented sus reactor cores para crear radiation clouds que disabled Draxan sensors. Una human captain, Eliza Frost del UNS Tempest, allowed su ship to take critical damage so that it appeared dead in space. Cuando Draxan vessels approached to capture the wreckage, detonó hidden charges que destroyed 3 enemy cruisers along with her own vessel. Los humans la celebraron como hero. Nombraron una new destroyer class after her. Shakes head in disbelief. El Draxan Empire había conquered 11 species over their 9,000-year history. Nunca habían known defeat. Pero as world after world fell to human forces, panic spread through their hierarchy. Supreme Commander Vorch, el most decorated military leader in Draxan history, committed suicide rather than report another defeat al Emperor. Su legendary Helix Squadron, undefeated for 7 centuries, fue reduced to radioactive debris in under 6 minutes cuando engaged Admiral Blackwood's flagship group. In desperation, los Draxans deployed su planet killer weapon against el human colony on Proxima Centauri 4. Destruyeron la colony y killed 6 million human settlers. Voice drops to whisper. En response, los humans no solo escalated, cambiaron the fundamental nature of the conflict. Admiral Blackwood implemented lo que los humans llamaban Protocol Zero. Every Draxan military installation, regardless of size or strategic value, fue targeted for complete destruction. No surrenders were accepted. No prisoners were taken. Para understand por qué los humans fought this way, tienes que understand algo fundamental about their psychology. Para most galactic species, warfare is an extension of politics, una way to secure advantages or resources. Para humans, warfare against those who violated their moral codes se convirtió en una crusade. No estaban fighting por territory o political gain. Estaban delivering judgment. El Draxan Emperor, en un final desperate move, ofreció unconditional surrender. La first time en su history que habían hecho such an offer. Envió a sus own children como hostages para demostrar sincerity. La human response. Admiral Blackwood accepted los hostages, acknowledged the surrender offer, y continued her attacks without pause. Projects footage of devastated Draxan worlds. Cuando le preguntaron sobre esta apparent violation of warfare conventions, Admiral Blackwood explicó el human thinking con terrifying clarity. They targeted healers. They broke the most fundamental rule of civilized conflict. The surrender should have come before they crossed that line, not after they realized the consequences. El most chilling aspect era la cold efficiency de todo. No había rush en human communications, no heated rhetoric. Ejecutaban su campaign con mathematical precision. Draxan officials expecting to negotiate con emotional creatures, encontraron instead un implacable force methodically working through a checklist of targets. Cuando el Great Draxan Fortress World de Corvex cayó after a 90-minute battle, el defending admiral envió una final transmission que se ha vuelto famous in military circles throughout the galaxy. They do not fight like a species at war. They operate like an immune system eliminating a disease. El breaking point, el momento cuando el mighty Draxan Empire truly understood la magnitude of their error, llegó exactly 42 days after la destruction of the medical convoy. Emperor Kratak, last of a royal line stretching back 2,000 years, convocó a su remaining war council en el ancient throne room on su homeworld, Draxus Prime. Solo 7 de los original 30 counselors estaban still alive. El resto habían sido killed in battle, committed suicide, o been executed for failure. Nuestras intelligence networks intercepted el Emperor's address. Nunca olvidaré sus words. We have awakened something that cannot be put back to sleep. Something that does not understand mercy because it believes we have forfeited the right to receive it. Ese mismo día, el Emperor tomó un unprecedented step. Viajó personally, risking su own sacred person, al neutral Arcturian Station con un formal document of unconditional surrender. Los terms que ofreció eran astonishing. Complete disarmament, war reparations amounting to 80% of the Empire's economic output for 50 years, el ritual suicide de every officer involved en el convoy attack, y la surrender de 2 core worlds a human control. By any sane measure, era more than generous. Era abject capitulation, el human representative, not even Admiral Blackwood herself, sino merely un junior commander llamado Jackson Wright. Recibió el document, lo leyó carefully, y luego respondió con 5 words que shook the galaxy. The terms are not accepted. El Emperor, forgetting all protocol, dropped to his knees before un lower-ranking officer de una upstart species. What more could you possibly want? Begged. Commander Wright's response fue delivered without emotion. Call Admiral Blackwood. She asked me to convey that your surrender will be accepted when the Draxan Empire no longer possesses the capability to fire on medical ships. Not before. Looks around the room gravely. 3 días después, human forces breached Draxus Prime's orbital defenses. Podrían haber destroyed el planet from orbit. Instead, landed troops, la first-time ground forces, habían sido deployed en el conflict. Yo estaba con un Centauri Observation Team monitoring from a safe distance. Vimos en horror cómo human soldiers, not automated drones como cualquier sensible species would use, sino actual living warriors, methodically captured every military installation on the planet. No harm to civilians. No destruction of cultural treasures. Simplemente eliminaron everything que could potentially be used for war. Weapons facilities, command centers, strategic resources, military academies, all reduced to rubble with surgical precision. Fue durante esta final phase que finally understood por qué los humans fought so differently from every other species. La revelation vino cuando observé a un grupo de human soldiers pause su advance patriot injured. Draxan civilians caught in the crossfire. La misma species que showed absolutely no mercy a Draxan military forces riscaban sus own lives to save Draxan children. Sus medics, wearing the same insignia as those killed on the convoy, worked tirelessly to heal al very species que estaban destroying. Voice filled with wonder. That's when I realized the truth. Los humans no peleaban por conquest or resources or even revenge. Peleaban to enforce a moral code que era more important to them than life itself. El principle de que those who heal must never be harmed, que the defenseless must be protected, even at terrible cost. No era hatred driving su merciless campaign. Era algo far more dangerous. Righteous purpose. On the 100th day de lo que después se llamaría the Mercy War, Admiral Penelope Blackwood finally accepted el Draxan surrender. La ceremony took place not in a grand hall befitting galactic powers, sino en el makeshift memorial que los humans habían erected on the debris field donde el medical convoy había sido destroyed. Los terms eran unprecedented en galactic history. El Draxan military no fue merely reduced, fue eliminated. Every warship, weapons factory y military installation fue dismantled or destroyed. El military officer class, all 6 million of them, fueron stripped of rank y assigned to rebuild la medical infrastructure the worlds devastated by the conflict. Pero lo que truly shocked a galactic observers, fueron las non-military provisions. Los Draxans fueron required to build medical facilities on every world en su former empire. 1/3 of their economic output for the next century would fund a new galactic medical corps staffed by personnel from all species. Every Draxan citizen would undergo mandatory education in medical ethics, y the treatment of non-combatants during conflict. Most symbolically, el Emperor himself fue reassigned to serve as a medical orderly en un human hospital por un periodo de 20 years. Not as punishment, sino as, en words de Admiral Blackwood, remedial education in the value of healing. Cuando los peace terms fueron published, la Galactic Power Structure experimentó lo que los humans colorfully llamaron a paradigm shift. Species que habían dominated por milenia de repente se encontraron reassessing su position relative a estos terrifying newcomers. El Arctelian hegemony, que había estado planning minor border incursions against human colonies, quietly abandoned those plans. El Selvin Collective, renowned for their logical approach to all matters, calculated the probable outcome of conflict with humans, e inmediatamente proposed una series de technology exchange programs to improve relations. Chuckles darkly. Most telling fue la reacción del Creole Imperium, el oldest and most aggressive empire en la galaxy. Su High Marshal, upon receiving a full briefing on el human Draxan conflict, reportedly destroyed el data tablet e issued new standing orders. Under no circumstances are human medical vessels, personnel, or facilities to be targeted, threatened, or impeded in any way, regardless of military necessity. This directive supersedes all others. Los humans, for their part, returned to sus previous pursuits with disturbing normality. Sus warships resumed peaceful exploration. Sus diplomats returned to discussing trade agreements, as if they hadn't just dismantled un empire que había stood for 9 millennia. Admiral Blackwood retired to teach en su military academy. Looks directly at students. Y este, young scholars, es el critical lesson que la galaxy learned at tremendous cost. Los humans no son like us. Pueden shift from peaceful cooperation to overwhelming violence con una speed y totality que defies conventional understanding. No fight por territory or resources or even survival. Fight por sus principles. En todas sus future diplomatic y military careers, remember this. Never harm those humans considered innocent or defenseless. Never target their healers. Never assume they will hesitate to unleash su full military potential if the lines are crossed. And never ever mistake su preference for peace as an inability or unwillingness to wage war. Before I conclude this lecture, quiero share la response de Admiral Blackwood cuando le preguntó el Galactic Council si los humans se unirían a los established Mutual Defense Pacts que habían maintained peace por millennia. Project's final holographic recording. Humanity doesn't need defensive pacts, dijo, looking each delegate in the eye. We don't need guarantees or treaties to respond when innocents are harmed. Today we defended our own. Tomorrow we might defend yours. Not because of politics or alliances, but because it's the right thing to do. That's something your empire still don't understand about us. Pauses recording. After that statement, 17 galactic powers inmediatamente requested human military advisors. 23 revised sus rules of engagement to specifically protect medical personnel. Y todos ellos, every single species, comenzaron watching human ships with a new emotion que muchos de ellos never habían experienced before. Algunos lo llamarían fear. Los wiser ones lo reconocieron como respect. Thank you for attending today's lecture. Remember, the next time you see a human medical vessel, be very, very polite.